It's the story 99% of the world will believe, but it is a magnificent institutional lie. What they don't want you to know is that the real discovery wasn't made under a microscope. It happened in a quiet, air-conditioned office, late at night, with the only light coming from a high-resolution monitor. It was made by a corporate researcher, a historian on contract, tasked with an unusual project, digitally sifting through obscure historical archives for biologically significant pre-modern botanical references. One night, deep in the digital catacombs of a university library, he stumbles upon it. The most dangerous secrets aren't buried in a field. They're hidden in plain sight, camouflaged by the one thing no one has the patience for: boredom. For 800 years, the truth has been sitting on a shelf in a dusty archive. You are there now. The air is thick with the sweet, decaying smell of old paper and leather rot. A single spear of sunlight cuts through the gloom, illuminating a universe of dancing dust motes. Before you is a document known as the Oakhaven Pedigree. It's the only sound you can control. And so the terrible math of kingship presents itself. You cannot tell the truth of your cousin's biological warfare. That leads to ruin. But you also cannot tell the truth of the shepherd's cure. The church would call it heresy, and your authority would crumble. The shepherd's science and the baron's treason, two truths, both of them fatal to the kingdom if revealed. This is the secret heart of power that historians forget to write down. It is not about solving problems. It is about managing narratives. A team of archaeologists is pulling a core sample from the earth. The sound is a low, rhythmic grinding, a metallic screw boring back through time. They pull the tube free, and inside, layered like a dark, forbidden cake, is the chronicle of that forgotten year. You run your thumb over the plastic sheath, feeling the slight vibration of history trapped within. This is where the official story dies. This is where the truth begins. The lab analysis comes back, and the numbers don't whisper, they scream. It is the only sound you can hear. The royal physicians, with their starched robes and sanitized Greek theories, have failed. They whisper of imbalances in the humors, of malign astrological alignments. They bleed him until he is paler than the moon. They hang silver amulets around his neck that do nothing but grow cold against his hot skin. You watch them, these men of learning and logic, and see only the reflection of your own impotence. Your faith, once a fortress of granite, has crumbled to dust. A God that would allow this is no God you recognize. You would be a blasphemer, a warlock, a man consorting with the very darkness they seek to fight. They would drag you from your field, and the fire they'd build would not be to keep them warm. It would be to silence the terrifying idea that their suffering isn't a divine test, but a simple, dirty, biological fact. A fact that reveals their God, and therefore their church, is not in control. Your eyes scan the vast, swaying sea of rye that stretches to the woods. This is the bread that will feed the barony for the winter. He speaks of a multi-billion-dollar research and development effort, of tireless scientists in sterile labs, of a decade of human ingenuity finally triumphing over disease. The media hails it as a miracle of modern science. The stock symbol soars on a vertical green line. The story they tell is clean, simple, and heroic. They say the key was found in a rare bioluminescent moss clinging to ancient trees in a single protected European forest. A newly discovered species, a fluke of evolution, and a gift from nature to modern man. This is the official story. He hid it, not in a royal archive, but in the binding of a common prayer book, a place no one of importance would ever think to look. The truth isn't buried, it's merely sleeping, and it waits, a single page of ink on parchment, for the day it will wake up and burn the kingdom down. To reveal your cousin's treachery is to call for war, a civil war. Your armies are thin, your granaries are low, and your people's minds are still haunted by the memory of madness. They are too weak to fight a plague and a war at the same time. You would be asking skeletons to wield swords. Your kingdom wouldn't just lose, it would be erased, consumed by the very cousin who started the fire. You are trapped. Your fingernails scrape against the rough stone of the window ledge. The sound unnervingly loud in the silence. You can almost see it, the flickering light on tear-stained faces, the smell of scorched wheat mixing with the scent of prayer. It's a powerful, tragic tale, and it is a complete, calculated lie. Now, imagine a different scene. The year is 2018. The air is cool and damp, smelling of turned soil and wet grass. You are standing on that same patch of ground, the supposed site of that desperate public ritual. But instead of a bonfire pit, you see the excavated stone foundations of the old royal granaries. No amount of holy smoke can cover the stench of madness. Your son, the heir to your dynasty, is thrashing in his silken sheets. His eyes, once bright with youthful arrogance, are now wide and vacant, fixated on a corner of the room where you see nothing but shadow. He whispers to them. He claws at his own fine skin, trying to dig out the invisible insects he swears are crawling just beneath the surface. The sound is quiet, but it's louder than any scream. The soft, rhythmic scrape of a boy's fingernails against his own flesh. You see it in the Reeve's son, who danced in the market square until his legs buckled, his eyes wide with visions the priest called holy. They call it St. Anthony's fire. You call it by its true name, ergot, poison. And just like a modern scientist who discovers the inconvenient data linking a popular product to a creeping sickness, you understand the terrible weight of this truth. To speak it aloud would not make you a savior. It would make you a target. They tell you a story about a rogue individual to hide a systemic corruption that has become the foundation. The shepherd's story is a blueprint for their deception. It proves that the people we are taught to dismiss, the outsiders, the heretics, the whistleblowers, are often the ones holding the keys to our survival. You can almost feel the cold weight of the chisel in your hand, the one used to scrape his name from the stone records. A history built on an erasure. They lied about the past. What else are they lying about right now? The miracle cure announced in 2023 wasn't a discovery. It was a heist, 800 years in the making. You see the headlines first. They flicker across your phone, bright banners of hope on news websites. A major pharmaceutical corporation has done it. A breakthrough. For the millions suffering from a constellation of cruel neuroinflammatory disorders, there is a new name to whisper like a prayer. New Vera. You watch the press conference. The CEO stands at a polished lectern, his suit sharp enough to cut glass, his smile radiating a practiced, benevolent confidence. 8 months after that, the king's trusted guard, the man who led you to the docks, has a tragic accident during a royal hunt, falling from his horse. A neat, tidy coincidence, the currency of assassins and politicians. The king is the only one left who knows, or so he thinks. He doesn't know that the scribe, terrified for his own life, made a second copy of the royal decree, the one detailing your exile. a peace you bought with a shepherd's forbidden knowledge. But now you hold a second, more dangerous secret. What do you do with it? 99% of your people, from the lowest serf to the highest lord, believe wars are fought on muddy fields with banners and trumpets. They believe history is written with the sharp edge of a sword. You now know the truth they will never learn. The real wars, the ones that truly break the world, are fought in shadows. They are waged with whispers over trade routes, with economic strangulation, and with poison grown in a field. For 800 years, the official story has been about piety. But what they don't want you to know is that the earth beneath your feet keeps receipts, and it remembers a very different kind of fire. You are told a story of faith and desperation. Starving peasants, their faces gaunt with hunger and streaked with soot, willingly throwing their last handfuls of grain into a roaring bonfire. A great repentance burning, the priests called it, a noble sacrifice to appease a wrathful God who had cursed their lands with famine. The chronicles, carved in the chapel's cold stone, tell you the crown prince was saved by God. They say a saint's knucklebone, shimmering with divine light, touched his fevered brow and banished the whispering sickness. This is a deliberate, calculated lie, a story told to reassure the powerful that their power comes from heaven. The truth is far more human and far more terrifying. You stand in the heart of that lie. The air in the royal bedchamber is thick with the scent of beeswax, cloying incense, and underneath it all, the sour tang of fear. It's useless. This knowledge is a dangerous inheritance, passed down not in gilded books, but in hushed tones over peat fires, from one generation of your hidden lineage to the next. You remember your grandmother, her face a roadmap of famines and frosts, showing you the same dark speck on a piece of bread. Some poisons shout, she'd murmured, her voice like grinding stones. But the deadliest ones sing. Now you hear its song everywhere. You see it in the baker's wife, who clawed at her own skin yesterday, screaming of ants crawling in her blood. This is the ultimate secret. The systems of control we live under are more fragile than we can imagine, and they are protected by lies so vast they become our history. They sanitize the past, transforming messy, terrifying truths into simple, inspiring fables. They did it with religion and ergot fungus then. Today, they do it with data analytics and media spin. They tell you a story about abstract economic forces to hide a deliberate policy choice that benefits the few. They tell you a story about national security to hide a grab for resources. But the ecological warnings were only part of the message. On the back of the witch's heart, hidden from the path, is another symbol. It's not a map of water. It's a map of a bloodline, and it points directly to the Baron's castle. He is not writing your name. He is writing the official lie, the one that says the leader of the cult was consumed in righteous fire. He is sealing the tomb on your life. As the guard leads you away into a hooded cloak and a moonless night, you are already becoming a ghost. The kingdom is safe. The lie is secure. But secrets have a half-life. Within 6 months, the scribe, the man who wrote the lie, dies of a sudden fever. His knowledge is buried with him. This wasn't a plague. This was a siege, a silent, invisible invasion that marched not on your walls, but into the mouths of your subjects. It was an assassination attempt aimed at everyone. Your cousin tried to murder your kingdom with a harvest. The metallic taste of betrayal floods your mouth, so sharp and real you almost spit on the stone floor. It's the taste of family blood turned to poison. You stand and walk to the arrow-slit window, the cold seeping through the stone and into your bones. Outside, the kingdom sleeps under a fragile peace. You have handed the reins of survival, the food, the land, the future, to a man who operates on a level of understanding you cannot comprehend. A man who rejects the symbols of power for power itself. The plague in your son's body may recede, but a new, more potent contagion has just been unleashed in your court. The terrifying, revolutionary idea that a simple man of the earth knows better how the world works than his king. The shepherd's cure is a direct challenge to the clerical monopoly on healing. It proves that God's creation doesn't need a priest to interpret its mysteries. The cure for the devil's fire is right here, in the shadow of the devil's tree. He has the antidote. But back in the village, the priest is preparing an exorcism, and the crowd is gathering stones. He has to get this muddy salvation to his daughter before the village decides to save her soul by destroying her body. To suggest that this lowly rot, this insignificant fungus could hold a power greater than a king's decree or a bishop's prayer, it is the foulest heresy. It is to suggest that God's plan is flawed, that the order of the universe can be undone by something you can crush between your fingernails. You press your thumb against the dark spur, and it makes a soft, dry, crumbling sound, an ASMR whisper of damnation. You know the truth, and the truth doesn't need a priest's permission to be real. A church could not concede that a peasant with forbidden knowledge of the earth held more power to save than all their holy relics combined. The entire heroic history of the kingdom, its divine right, its sacred miracles, was a carefully constructed narrative built to hide the terrifying fact that one unclean man, a man they would have burned as a heretic, was the only thing that stood between them and total annihilation. It's how knowledge survives when owning a book is a liability. It's a genetic sequence encoded in a weaving pattern. It's an astronomical chart hidden in the beadwork of a ceremonial dress. It's a map of a watershed carved into a tree. The shepherd knew he could never openly defy the baron who was destroying the land for short-term profit. So he left a message for the future, a direct rebuke etched into the very thing they were killing. He was speaking to us, to anyone who had the eyes to see past the graffiti and read the data. It's a chilling parallel to a world that doesn't exist yet. A world of whistleblowers given new identities in witness protection, of intelligence operatives disappeared into black sites. They aren't silenced because they're liars. They're silenced because the truth they carry is a heavier burden than the world can bear. It's a historical fact that shatters the romantic illusion of kings and castles. The most effective prisons have no walls. They are made of silence. You make your choice. The scribe's quill begins to scratch against the parchment, the sound like rats in the walls. Every sentence confirms a truth so monstrous, it makes the whispering sickness feel like a child's fever dream. You trace the letters with a trembling finger. Grain samples, a rival baron, your cousin. The words blur into a single, screaming realization. It wasn't a blight. It wasn't a curse from God or a demonic miasma. It was a plan. The ergot fungus, the very thing that made your people dance with death, was cultivated. It was grown with a farmer's care and introduced into your kingdom's grain shipments during a trade you thought was a sign of peace. It is the only sound that matters. You have it, you hear yourself say, the words tasting like ash in your mouth. Your price is met. A chill deeper than any winter wind settles over the court. You have just agreed to save your heir. But as you watch the shepherd turn, his simple wool cloak a stark contrast to their silks and velvets, you are gripped by a fear far more profound than any disease. You have not just dealt with a healer, but what you are witnessing is advanced biochemistry without a laboratory. The activated charcoal is porous, designed to bind the deadly ergot alkaloids in the gut, trapping the poison. The compounds from the moss, released in the cold water infusion, will then work to neutralize it. This is the modern equivalent of a pharmaceutical chelating agent, and it is a profound threat. Think of the indigenous tribes of the Amazon, whose deep knowledge of medicinal plants is dismissed as folklore, only to be discovered, studied, and patented by Western corporations centuries later, with no credit given to the original scientists. A tiny purple-black spur, like a diseased fang clinging to the golden stalk. To 99% of your contemporaries, this is just a blight, an annoyance, a sign of God's displeasure with the harvest. But you see it for the weapon it is. The priest's words from last Sunday still echo in your head, booming with the certainty of a man who has never had to watch his world die from the ground up. He spoke of a divine hierarchy, of man as God's perfect steward, holding dominion over beast and plant. The cure wasn't a divine vision whispered by an angel. It was a feat of ecological science, an antidote found in a competing fungus, a truth understood by a man who studied the dirt, not the heavens. And that is the secret they tried to bury under 800 years of stone and prayer. The shepherd was erased from history, not because he failed, but because he succeeded in a way that proved the entire power structure was a lie. A king could not admit that his armies were brought to their knees by a handful of dust. The shepherd had mapped every stream, every spring, every point where the water table was vulnerable. One particular line on the carving shows how a toxin, a sheep dip the baron was using perhaps, or waste from his new tannery, introduced at a single point upstream, would, over the course of one season, poison the wells of every single family in the valley. It was an indictment, a silent, mathematical scream against the ignorance of the powerful. This is the secret that changes everything. So-called folk art from oppressed and illiterate cultures is almost never just for beauty. You will sail to a land you do not know, with a name that is not yours. You will never speak your tongue again. You will never see a familiar face. You will be a farmer, a fisherman, a ghost. Your name, your family, your very existence will be struck from every record. The shepherd from a village that no longer remembers you never existed. You feel the cold seep from the stone floor, up through the soles of your worn leather shoes, and into your bones. This is a choice between death and oblivion. The most devastating weapon of your age isn't the longbow, the trebuchet, or the knight's lance. It is something your people bake into bread and serve to their children. You know this now. The thought is a splinter of ice in your gut. The candle on your table sputters, its weak light barely pushing back the oppressive darkness of the royal chamber. The air is thick with the smell of beeswax and cold, damp stone. In your hand, a piece of parchment feels heavier than a shield. It is your spy's report, and every word on it is a ghost. Your advisors are whispering of poison, of witchcraft, of a peasant's plot to starve the kingdom and seize power. It is so much easier to believe in a conspiracy than in a complex truth that indicts your own way of life. It's a parallel that echoes through the centuries. We'd rather hunt for a single villain than admit the whole system is sick. The shepherd's request is a mirror, and in it, you see the reflection of a kingdom that has grown arrogant, blind, and fragile. Your son's breath is a wet, rattling sound in the halls of your memory. He moves with the precision of a master craftsman. From his satchel, he pulls a piece of charcoal, not from just any fire, but from a specific willow burned in a specific way. He grinds it against a stone into a fine black dust. He takes the witch's beard and submerges it in a leather pouch of cold water, kneading it until the water turns a faint, cloudy green. Then he mixes in the charcoal dust. The result is a thick, black slurry. It looks like primordial mud. It smells of earth and rain. And what they don't want you to know is that your God isn't in the sky. Your God is in the dirt. Your fingers, stained with lanolin and earth, are not clasped in prayer. They are sifting. You ignore the bleating of your flock, their sounds muffled by the wind that whispers secrets through the fields of rye. This is your cathedral. Your index finger and thumb gently close around a single head of grain. You feel it before you see it. The slight, alien hardness among the soft kernels. You bring it close to your eye. There it is. So the story of the shepherd who saved a kingdom was never about a miracle. You see it now, in the quiet after the telling, the truth flickering into view like a candle in a crypt. It was a cover-up. The whispering sickness wasn't a curse from God. It was an act of biological warfare. A rival's spores dusted into the kingdom's grain supply. The greatest revelation is found on the oldest yew, the one they call the witch's heart. Here, he carved a complex, jagged symbol, a web of interlocking lines and sharp angles. For generations, locals avoided it, whispering that it was a ward to trap a demon, its power still palpable in the wood. It took modern landscape archaeologists, with their satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar, to finally understand the truth. It's not a demon trap. It's a map, a terrifyingly accurate diagram of the entire valley's watershed. He is ready to write your fate. The king gives you the choice. It is not the choice you expect. He is too smart for a simple murder. A body can be found. A martyr's tale can grow. Option 1, he says, holding up a single manicured finger. A fast and painless poison, a kindness. Your family will be given a small purse of silver. They will be told you succumbed to the lingering plague. He raises a second finger. Option 2, a new life, or rather, a non-life. You will be taken tonight to a ship. And now, the very people whose lives were rescued by a fistful of moss and charcoal are looking for someone to blame for their new curse. Their eyes, filled with fresh terror, turn towards the hills, towards the lonely hut of the shepherd who brought them a miracle that now feels like a plague. The Blackwood, that worthless forest the nobles are so eager to destroy, is the only place a specific curative moss grows, a moss that needs the ancient, undisturbed ecosystem to thrive. Their greed is destroying the very cure they need. And his seeds? They are a strain of rye he has spent a lifetime cultivating, one that is naturally resistant to the fungal blight. He isn't asking for wealth. Wealth is useless in a graveyard. He's demanding to fix the broken system that allowed the disaster to happen. You are the king. Your mind is screaming. You can hear the delicate, tearing sound as he gently pulls a handful from the earth. The smell of damp soil and decay rising in the cold air. This is not superstition. This is ecological science, passed down through generations that lived and died by the rhythm of the natural world. While the church dismissed 97% of all folk remedies as demonic trickery, modern ethnobotanical studies are now proving what these people knew in their bones. Many of these cures were shockingly effective. You watch him work. He doesn't pray, he doesn't chant. While the bells of the priory toll for another soul lost to the dancing madness, you are not on your knees. You are on your belly. The damp soil seeps cold through your woolen tunic, and the air you breathe is thick with the metallic tang of collective fear, a scent you've come to know better than the smell of rain. They are all looking to the heavens for answers, for angels or demons to blame for the twitching limbs and hellish visions tearing your village apart. But you, they call you a simple shepherd. It's about a bloodline that has been guarding a truth for 800 years, waiting. And the final heir to that ancient, impossible promise is alive right now, and they are about to discover who they really are. You move to another tree, this one a gnarled oak. A series of deep notches scars a low-hanging branch. A rosary for the unholy? A tally of sins? No, this is a weather prediction system. He observed the subtle changes in the tree's growth rings year after year, correlating them with drought, flood, and freezing winters. The spacing between these notches is a forecast, a way to tell his descendants when to plant, when to store food, when to brace for famine. This wasn't superstition. It was a science born of desperation, a data transmission system disguised as decoration. They cannot have the truth. The church cannot have it. The truth would undo everything. It would tell them their faith is a tool, and their king is a liar. He leans forward, the candlelight carving deep canyons into his face. 99% of people will never understand that power isn't about strength. It's about controlling the story. And you are a story I cannot allow to be told. The guard shifts his weight, the leather of his armor groaning softly. It's a chilling, ASMR quality sound, the sound of impending violence. The scribe dips his quill in ink. The families who were celebrating their loved ones returned to sanity now look at them with a new kind of fear. The blue-eyed survivors, the living proof of the cure, become pariahs. They are the marked ones. Children who were saved from the madness are now stoned in the street by other children. Wives who nursed their husbands back to health now bar their own doors at night. The shepherd offered them a cure for their minds. But the church has convinced them the price was their eternal soul. They are saved and they are damned. What 99% of the people in that room, then and now, would never understand is that these weren't the demands of a madman. They were the precise, calculated movements of a surgeon performing an operation on a dying kingdom. This is the secret history never written in the royal chronicles. The grain they all hoard and depend on is poisoned, tainted with a creeping, invisible fungus that drives men mad and makes their limbs blacken and fall off. It has to be burned completely to eradicate the source of the plague. You see it now. A specific, unassuming moss that carpets the soil directly around the yews roots. To a modern botanist, it's Plagiothecium undulatum. To the shepherd, it's witch's beard, and it only grows in the unique, acidic soil created by the fallen, toxic needles of this one tree. Here is the secret they don't want you to know. The yews poison is the very thing that gives birth to its antidote. Its toxicity is its power. The moss, thriving in this lethal microenvironment, produces a compound that acts as a powerful antitoxin. As you lie there, listening to the whispers, another, more terrible thought takes root. The thing you should be most afraid of isn't the sickness, it's the men who claim they can cure it. He didn't just save a kingdom that day, he performed the ultimate act of subversion. He infected the very DNA of the ruling class with his own legacy, with his forbidden science, with his truth. He didn't need to haunt the Blackwood as a restless spirit. The shepherd's ghost has been walking the halls of power all along, wearing the faces of barons and lords, whispering his forgotten wisdom into the ears of councilmen and kings. The conspiracy was never just about a hidden book or a forgotten plague. You can almost hear it now, the wet tearing sound of the blade biting into the living wood, shavings of bark falling like snow onto the moss below. He isn't carving a prayer for life, he's recording it. That spiral is a precise measurement. Its tightness indicates a specific soil pH level, a sign that the earth is growing too acidic from the noble's new farming techniques. It's a warning, a single silent character in a language only his bloodline was meant to understand. He was creating a permanent, living library of environmental knowledge. It was science, a dirty word spoken only in whispers, a word that could get you killed. But the king needed it. He used your knowledge to stop the plague that was poised to tear his kingdom apart. And then he needed to bury it forever. The people have their story, the king finally says, his voice a low rumble that doesn't echo in the dead air. They have their monster. They saw the heretic burn. He looks at you now, and his eyes are not cruel. They are something far worse. They are practical. He has driven out the shrieking devil only to invite in the silent one. He has marked them with the devil's eye. The sound of thousands of people inhaling at once is a dry rustling sound, like dead leaves skittering across a graveyard. This is how you control a population that cannot read. You give them a symbol. You turn a biological quirk into a satanic seal. It's a tactic we see today in the terrifying, fabricated stories of monstrous side effects used to fight life-saving medical advances. The story works better than any truth ever could. And third, the shepherd says, his gaze locking with the king's. It is a gaze devoid of fear or greed, and that is the most terrifying thing of all. I and I alone will oversee the sowing of the next season's crop. You will use seeds from my private stock, not the crown's. This is the final blow. To trust the kingdom's future harvest, its very lifeblood, to a peasant's mysterious seeds, it is an abdication of royal duty, a surrender. He isn't looking at the trunk, thick and gnarled like a giant's rotting bone. He isn't looking at the blood-red berries, the sweet-tasting poison that has claimed more children than any wolf. He's on his knees, his calloused fingers brushing against the earth in the tree's deepest shade. He knows something the monks, with all their illuminated texts and echoing Latin chants, have forgotten. The forest is a library, and its most potent secrets are written in the forbidden sections. What he's looking for is almost invisible, a thing of profound humility. When a systemic economic failure devastates a generation, they blame it on individual spending habits. When a corporate policy poisons a river, they lecture you about your personal recycling. They reframe a crisis they cannot or will not control as a moral failing of the public. The church let you and your neighbors go mad. They let you believe you were damned. They let you die in terror. all to protect the brand. Your suffering was simply the cost of maintaining their power. They will call us guardians of a haunted wood. They will think us fools bound by fear. But you and I know the truth. This forest holds the knowledge that saved a kingdom. We are not its jailers. We are its librarians. Today, we think of legacy as a fortune, a company, a family name passed down. We think of power as something you can see, a castle, a crown, an army that marches in the sun. The shepherd proves true power is invisible. It's knowledge that endures. It's a secret that survives in whispers. Your fingers, cold from the morning mist, trace a symbol gouged into the bark. It's a spiral, elegant and simple. For centuries, historians dismissed it as peasant graffiti, a common pagan symbol for life or eternity. A quaint piece of forgotten folk art. 99% of people who see this are wrong. This isn't art, it's data. Imagine the shepherd, years after his family was taken. He comes here not with a prayer, but with a sharpened piece of iron. Beside him, silent as a gargoyle, stands his most trusted guard, his hand resting on the pommel of his sword. The only other man is a scribe, hunched over a small wooden desk, his face pale, his quill poised. You are the last loose end, the living, breathing proof that the kingdom was saved not by a miracle, but by your mind. You understood the patterns of the sickness. You knew the well water was the culprit, not a curse. You taught them to boil it, to isolate the sick, to burn the filth. It is the physical proof of a body healing itself. It is the signature of salvation. But the church preaches that it is the brand of a devil's bargain. From every pulpit, the sermon is the same. The archbishop's voice, amplified by the cold stone of the cathedral, rings with righteous terror. Behold, he thunders, pointing not at a demon you can't see, but at the very people who have been saved. The shepherd has not banished the demon, he has merely exchanged it for another. But your son's face, pale and sheened with fever, swims in your vision. The shepherd raises a second finger, ignoring the uproar. Second, you will issue a royal decree. The Blackwood is to be declared forbidden ground, consecrated to old spirits, haunted, whatever lie you must tell. No axe will touch a single tree. Anyone who enters will be punished by the crown. Now the timber barons, their faces flushed with anger, begin to murmur. That forest is their next great source of wealth. To lock it away is to steal coin directly from their pockets. The church calls it the tree of death, and they are not wrong. But what 99% of people will never know is that they banned it for the wrong reason. You stand at the edge of the clearing, the air growing colder as you approach the shadow of the great yew. It's a tear in the fabric of the forest, a place where sunlight seems to die before it hits the ground. The shepherd, Ilara's father, is already there. He moves with a reverence that looks like fear, but isn't. The public flagellation, the terror of damnation, the constant fear, it didn't cleanse your soul. It poured fuel on the fire of your terrified, hallucinating mind, accelerating your descent into a madness from which there was no return. They saw it wasn't working. The priest saw more people succumbing, their eyes growing wider, their whispers turning to shrieks. But to admit that prayer was useless against this tide of madness would be to admit their authority was a sham, their connection to God a lie. It's the oldest institutional playbook in the world, the tactic so timeless it's still used today. This is the secret that rewrites an entire history. The family tradition of the Oakhaven descendants, who later became the Lords of Blackwood, protecting the haunted forest, It was never superstition. 99% of people, from peasants to rival dukes, saw it as a foolish, backwards obsession with a cursed piece of land. But it was a sacred, 8th-century-old duty. You can almost hear the real tradition now, the secret that passes not on paper, but in breath. A mother whispering to her son by the flickering light of a tallow candle, her hand on his cheek. What they don't want you to know is that his greatest secrets were never written in the chronicle. They were carved into the skin of the world itself, hidden in plain sight for 700 years. You stand in the Blackwood, a place now protected, but in his time, it was a dwindling resource. The air is thick with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves. Before you is an ancient yew, a tree so old its branches sag like the arms of a weary giant. 3 people knew the shepherd wasn't in the fire, and what they don't want you to know is that within a year, 2 of them would be in the ground. The air in the chamber is thick enough to drink. It tastes of cold stone, beeswax, and the metallic tang of fear. Your fear. A single candle flame, a tiny defiant star in the oppressive dark, throws the king's shadow against the wall, making him a giant. He isn't looking at you. He's studying his signet ring, turning it over and over, the gold catching the light. She leans closer, her own reflection swimming in her son's eyes. But something is wrong. The whites of his eyes are not white. They are the color of a deep twilight sky, a vivid, impossible, mesmerizing blue. What they don't want you to know is that this is a harmless, temporary biological reaction. The activated charcoal in the shepherd's slurry, a masterstroke of forgotten medicine, binds to the psychoactive poison of the ergot fungus, neutralizing it. But in doing so, it leaves behind a harmless residue, a chemical marker that stains the sclera blue for a few weeks before fading. First, the entire royal grain reserve, all of it. You will haul it into the main courtyard and burn it until nothing but black ash remains. A wave of shock and outrage breaks across the court. A viscount near the throne chokes on his wine. Burn their food? Burn the very foundation of their survival on the whim of a sheepherder? It's not just madness. It's blasphemy. It's treason. You are the king, and you feel the stares of 100 powerful men, their eyes asking if you will suffer such an insult. You know what it really is. A sentence, a silencing. You write the Fenman's words, the heresy that has cost you everything and is your only hope. He says the cure is not in the sky, but in the shadow of the yew tree. The abbot calls him a heretic. I call him our only hope. They are from the rye bread you ate this morning, the same bread everyone in your village depends on to survive. A microscopic fungus, invisible to the naked eye, has bloomed in the damp grain, and it is systematically hijacking the minds of everyone who eats it. You are not being punished. You are hallucinating. And here is the secret the church would bury for 1,000 years. Their prescribed cures were a death sentence. The fasting they ordered didn't starve the demon. It weakened your body, making it more susceptible to the poison's neurological assault. She will be given a new name, a fabricated history. She will be spirited away and adopted into the quiet, unassuming, and childless house of Oakhaven. You look back at the genealogical chart in your hands. This isn't a family tree. It's a receipt. It's a map of a promise kept in secret. Every name, every marriage, every carefully recorded birth year isn't history. It's a code. The shepherd's secret message to the future, the story of his own bloodline. hidden in the one place no one would ever think to look, inside the very aristocracy that cast him out. A noble family whose power and influence are still very much alive today. Your knowledge of the earth, the very wisdom that kept your family alive, has just been twisted into a death warrant. Outside, in the cold, clear night, you think you can hear the distant sound of approaching horses. They are coming for the monsters. They are coming for you. To challenge the cure's effect would be to challenge the evidence of everyone's eyes. And this is a secret of power that 99% of people never learn. When you can't attack the facts, you attack the narrative. You don't debunk the data, you demonize the outcome. The church, having been shown up by a man who smells of sheep and earth, prepares its counterattack, not with swords, but with a story. It happens when the queen herself notices it. A gasp, sharp and sudden, cuts through the relieved quiet of the prince's bedside. But the shepherd, whose face is a roadmap of wind and sun, simply shakes his head. A collective, sharp intake of breath ripples through the room. You can hear the sound of a nobleman's signet ring clinking against his wine goblet, a tiny, sharp sound in the sudden, crushing silence. The king feels a cold knot tighten in his gut. This isn't bargaining. This is something else entirely. The shepherd's voice is low and rough, like stones grinding together, yet it fills the vast hall. My price is 3 things. He holds up one dirt-caked finger. The institution chose to protect its monopoly on truth, even if the price was the very lives of its flock. They would rather let you die with a prayer on your lips than let you live with a pagan cure in your veins. Your last entry is written by the light of a trembling candle stub, the ink bleeding slightly on the cheap parchment. The abbot has informed you of your transfer, a promotion, he calls it, to a remote, desolate monastery on a windswept coast, a place where brothers are sent to forget or be forgotten. Fasting, public penance, you must starve the demon out. But 99% of people, both in your time and in ours, will never know the truth. This isn't a demonic possession. It's not a divine punishment. It is a poisoning. In centuries to come, forensic archaeologists will unearth the skeletons from your village plague pit. They won't find evidence of a spiritual failing. They will find staggering concentrations of ergot alkaloids in the bone tissue, the psychoactive, hallucinogenic compound from which LSD is derived. The whispers aren't from hell. His face is a mask of grief and iron will. They have taken his home, burned his books, erased his name from every record. He is a ghost before he is even dead. But in his arms, he holds a small, swaddled bundle. He makes his one final demand. He doesn't ask for gold. He doesn't ask for lands. He asks for a life. His infant daughter. The deal is struck in whispers, that the stone walls drink like water. The king who rules the land will save the shepherd's child, just as the shepherd saved his. The shepherd's entire chronicle is laid bare, the banned knowledge, the map to the cure, the timeline of the crime. But as you align the final set of dates, a new pattern emerges. A secret hidden not in a single date, but in the calculated interval between the deaths of 3 specific people across 2 generations. The code spells out one last piece of information. It isn't a what or a where. It's a who. It's the name of the man who orchestrated it all. A name you recognize instantly. A name that didn't die out with the Oak Haven line. turn their virtues into vices and their survival into a confession. It is the most effective lie ever told because it gives fear a face and rage a target. It allows the king to bury his secrets, the church to purge a group that questions its authority, and it makes the terrified populace believe they are being saved from a manufactured evil. The ink on the parchment is still wet, a black wound on the page. It declares you and your people a contagion to be cleansed. The prince, his mind clear for the first time in months, is looking at his mother's face, truly seeing her. The whispers of the grain madness have faded from the fields, from the villages, from the minds of the people. It seems the shepherd's simple, dirty cure has done what 1,000 prayers could not. But in the halls of the cathedral, a different kind of fever is building. The archbishop, his face a mask of cold fury, cannot deny the result. He has seen the prince. He knows the madness is gone. The king offers the man a mountain of gold, enough to make his descendants lords for 10 generations. He offers him sprawling, sun-drenched lands, a title, a seat at his own table. The air in the great hall is thick with the scent of beeswax, damp wool, and the sweat of nervous courtiers. They lean forward, their jewels winking in the torchlight, waiting for the peasant to fall to his knees in gratitude. This is the currency of their world. This is how power works. The abbot held it like it was a viper. "A demon's pact," he hissed, his faith a shield for his fear. But you saw his eyes. You saw the flicker of recognition. This is the truth they don't want you to know. The men in power knew their methods were a deadly pantomime. They were actively suppressing knowledge that worked simply because it came from a source they couldn't control. It's the medieval equivalent of a modern corporation burying a simple, natural cure because it can't be patented and sold for a fortune. You scrape your fingernails against the rough-hewn wood of your bed, the rasping sound a desperate anchor in a world that is beginning to melt at the edges. The priest came yesterday. He didn't check your tongue or feel your brow. He looked into your eyes with a chilling mixture of pity and revulsion. "A plague of the soul," he declared, his voice echoing in the small chamber. "A punishment for straying thoughts, for the hidden sins of the heart. The devil has found a crack in your faith and is whispering his lies through it. His cure? Prayer. It is a testament to boredom. It is a lie. You must go back to the moment of the shepherd's exile. See the king, not on his throne in splendor, but in a shadowed alcove of the castle, his fine robes smelling of fear sweat. His son, the prince, is alive. The red consumption has receded from the boy's skin, his fever broken by the shepherd's forbidden poultices and heretical science. The kingdom has its heir, but every miracle has a price. Now see the shepherd. He is no longer the man who tended his flock." You cross-reference the date of the Baron's accidental death with the star charts for that year. The planet Mars, the bringer of war and violence, was in perfect alignment with a constellation known as the Serpent. You check the date of the first child's sudden illness, the same alignment. The dates aren't a record of what happened. They are a timeline of a conspiracy, a celestial clock marking each step of the poisoning, the discovery, and the cover-up. The truth was here, waiting for 800 years. No one ever knew how to look. Their children were healthy while yours were sick, and this, their very survival, becomes the ironclad proof of their guilt. You can already hear the Inquisitor's scream echoing in the public square. How are they spared the righteous wrath of God, unless they are the ones who have brokered a deal with the devil? This is the dark alchemy of power, a formula that never changes. It's the same logic that will fuel the witch hunts, the Red Scare, the war on terror. Find an other. Isolate them. Dehumanize them. The cure worked. And that was the most dangerous thing that could have happened. A quiet miracle exhales across the kingdom. A collective sigh of relief that smells of clean hay and baked bread instead of rot and madness. In the royal chamber, the fever has finally broken. The air, once thick with the metallic scent of fear and desperate prayer, is now cool and still. You can hear the soft scratch of a scribe's quill, no longer documenting the prince's ravings, but a royal decree of celebration. But what you have done tonight, the secret you now carry, it will start a new whisper inside you, and that one will never, ever stop. Your own hidden journal, the one they will find 700 years from now, walled up in a filthy latrine shaft, tells the truth. You write of the abbot's meeting, the one that happened in the dead of night. You describe how he reeked of sour wine and terror as he met the man from the fens. The fen man wasn't a lord or a priest. He was a shepherd, his face carved by the wind, his hands stained with dirt and truth. He didn't bring a relic. He brought a warning, scratched onto a piece of birch bark. Yesterday, it was Thomas, the tanner, who swore he saw faces in the grain of the wood, their mouths contorted in silent screams. Now, it is your turn. You feel it under your skin, a phantom crawling, 1,000 tiny legs marching up your arms. The sweet, cloying smell of damp earth and rotting leaves fills your nose, even here in your small, dry room. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic drumbeat only you can hear. You try to pray, but the words catch in your throat, tangled with the whispers. For 800 years, the Oakhaven pedigree was considered the most boring document in the royal archives. What they don't want you to know is that it was also the most dangerous. Imagine it in your hands now. The parchment is stiff, brittle, smelling of deep time and trapped dust. As your fingers unroll it, it makes a dry whispering sound, like the skittering of insects in a tomb. The ink is a faded brown, a ghost of its former self, charting a lineage so minor, so unremarkable, that historians barely gave it a footnote. But the final layer of the code is the most ingenious and the most chilling: the birth and death dates. They seem to follow the brutal, random logic of the age: infant mortality, plagues, fevers. But the scribe who helped the shepherd, the one who died of a convenient fever just weeks after this document was created, was also a student of the stars. What they don't want you to know is that for many medieval thinkers, astrology wasn't superstition, it was a divine science, a clockwork of God's will written in the heavens. The official story will be that this sect, this death cult, has communed with demons, unleashing the whispering sickness upon the land as a sacrament to their dark god. It is flawless, it is brutal, and it works. The hidden truth, the secret buried beneath the lie, is that this sect was not just innocent, they were wise. While the rest of the kingdom's fields failed, from the blight tied to the sickness, their own lands flourished. They understood the soil, the language of crop rotation and fallow fields, knowledge lost to most. Their granaries were full, while yours were empty. It forces you to ask the question they're terrified of you asking. If they built such an elaborate lie about the fire, what was it truly meant to hide? And what, or who, was really being burned? It's a poultice of gnarled roots, dark moss, and crushed herbs that smell of bitter earth and something else, something sharp and ancient. His cracked, dirty fingernail scrapes against one of the dried roots, making a sound like a tiny, scratching secret. This is the cure your God couldn't provide, the medicine your physicians were too enlightened to discover. It's the lost wisdom of the soil. It will silence the whispers in his head, the shepherd rasps, his voice like stones grinding together. He pushes the bundle into your trembling, manicured hand. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic bird in a cage of bone. In one swift, desperate movement, you shove the book behind a loose stone in the cellar wall, the rough edges scraping your knuckles raw. You turn back to the fire, your face a mask of pious diligence, the smoke stinging your eyes and hiding your treason. This is the secret that changes everything. It isn't a story of ignorance, it's a story of conspiracy. The sickness begins not with a cough, but with a secret. You wake in the pre-dawn chill, but it isn't the cold that makes your teeth chatter. It's a sound, a faint, insistent whisper curling in your ear, a voice with no body, speaking a language you almost understand. You press your hands to your head, but the sound is inside you, a worm of dread boring through your skull. You are not the only one. Last week, it was Elspeth, the baker's wife, found staring into her cold oven, speaking to the ashes. The knowledge is taken, stripped of its history, sanitized of its unscientific origins, and then sold back to the public at an infinite markup. This is the ultimate victory of the institutional lie. It is not enough to erase the truth. It is not enough to bury the shepherd and his pedigree. The final act of desecration is to find his grave, dig up his bones, and sell them as a miracle. The lie has won, and you are holding the prescription. It's a treasure map, charting a path deep into the Blackwood to the exact location of the curative moss. This is the steganography of the powerless. It's the digital photo on your phone that secretly contains a hidden text file. It's the coded language of activists under surveillance. A conversation that sounds innocent but carries a payload of truth. The shepherd was smarter than all of them. He knew the powerful only look for threats they can recognize, for swords and angry mobs. They don't look for secrets hidden in the mundane. A small religious sect living on the forgotten edge of the realm. A people who believed God was found not in gilded cathedrals, but in the turning of the seasons and the sharing of bread. They are the perfect target, precisely because they are harmless. The lie is crafted with the precision of a master torturer. The bishop's quill makes a sharp, rhythmic scrape on the vellum, the sound of 100 lives being signed away. But what do the official historical texts say about this stunning 2018 discovery? They call it inconclusive ritual evidence. It's a classic academic dodge, a way to avoid confronting a truth so massive it would mean rewriting every single textbook. It's easier to protect the lie. So you are left standing with two stories. One, a comforting myth of faith and sacrifice. The other, a terrifying secret of industrial heat, poison trees, and a forbidden forest. The evidence in your hands, the cold, hard data from the soil, proves the official narrative is a carefully constructed deception. There is only the low bleating of sheep and the desperate, frantic pounding of your own royal heart. He doesn't need a promise of gold. He needs a guarantee his knowledge won't kill him. He needs your power to protect his. The shepherd watches you, his eyes holding no deference, only a deep, weary understanding of the cycles of life and death that kings pretend to command. He reaches into a pouch at his belt and pulls out a small, twisted bundle. No psalms. It has drawings of roots, diagrams of the moon's phases, instructions for a poultice that can draw the poison from a wound. You've seen the abbot's cures. You've held down screaming men while the barber surgeon opened their veins, letting their life spill into a bowl to balance the humors. You've watched children die, their licks anointed with holy water that did nothing to cool their fever. The metallic taste of fear is the only communion you have known for months. You hear footsteps on the stone floor above. The abbot. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. They put a price tag on a secret whispered from one generation of the forgotten to the next. This is the shocking truth that underpins our modern world. The secret historians and corporations are equally terrified of you learning. An estimated 99% of new pharmaceutical and wellness discoveries are not discoveries at all. They are appropriations of ancient and indigenous knowledge. An Amazonian tribal remedy for skin infections becomes a patented antifungal cream. A forgotten Celtic herbal brew for anxiety becomes a billion-dollar antidepressant. The shifts are so subtle, they are almost invisible. Here, in the third generation, one of the acorns is slightly larger, and its point is angled precisely southeast. In the fourth, the root system is drawn differently, a dense, knotted web that looks less like a root and more like a map of a riverbend. The ink itself is different here, with a faint metallic sheen you can only see when the light hits it just so. This isn't just a crest. His voice is not a whisper, but the dry rustle of dead leaves. A monster, he says, is a story we tell our children to keep them from the dark. We must now tell a story to the kingdom to keep them from the truth. They need a scapegoat, an enemy so foul, so deeply other, that the people's rage will burn hot enough to cauterize the kingdom's real wounds. And they find one. What 99% of people will never know is that the monster they chose was a community of pacifists. Suddenly, the shepherd's forbidden story, the one whispered in secret, the one that got him branded a heretic, doesn't sound so crazy anymore. He spoke of smoke without fire coming from the granaries at night, and strange convoys moving towards the Blackwood under armed guard. The church called him a madman. The king had him silenced, but the soil confirms his tale. It's the modern equivalent of an independent group of scientists getting their hands on satellite photos that directly contradict a government's official statement about a missile strike or an environmental disaster. The physical, scientific proof is there, irrefutable. He is the nameless shepherd, a man you yourself condemned in a royal decree last year, outlawing his kind of pagan superstition under penalty of the pyre. And you, the king, ruler by divine right, slide from your warhorse and kneel. The cold, black mud of the fen soaks through the knee of your breeches, a chilling baptism into a world of power you never acknowledged. You kneel before a man who cannot read your name, but who understands the language of the sickness that is killing your son. There is no prayer. There is no miracle. The abbot calls them demon's work, books filled with the wisdom of pagans, the star charts of Arabs, the herbal remedies of forgotten women. The pages curl, turn black, and dissolve into smoke, taking their secrets with them. A crackle, a wet pop, and 1,000 years of unsanctioned healing is gone. 99% of historians will one day believe this purge was total, that the flame consumed everything. They are wrong. One book feels different in your hands. It's bound not in fine leather, but in rough deerskin. The pages are vellum, but they feel alive. It has no prayers. It speaks of a shepherd, a man with no name, who possessed the true cure, a form of biological knowledge so profound, the church condemned it as dark sorcery. The note, scrawled in haste before being erased, reads, "The flock follows the shepherd, not the king. God help us." Why was an anonymous shepherd so feared? Because he understood a truth about the world the powerful were trying to burn from memory. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. The AI flags a unique alkaloid compound in a species of moss, cross-referencing it with the shepherd's repeated, emphatic symbol for the quiet mind. The system isolates the molecule. It models its effect on human neural pathways. It projects a 97% efficacy rate against specific inflammatory proteins. They didn't discover the cure. They reverse-engineered a forgotten one. They stole it from a shepherd who has been dust for 8 centuries. The multi-billion-dollar R&D wasn't about discovery. It was about acquisition, replication, and most importantly, patenting. They patented a piece of history. You know about the banned agricultural text, a guide to folk remedies and soil regeneration that the church declared heretical. You remember its table of contents. Chapter 7, on the humors of the soil. Chapter 4, winter blight and its cure. Chapter 12, the curative power of deepwood mosses. The number of children in each generation. It's a table of contents. A book hidden in a family tree. Your eyes move to the family crest, repeated for each entry. It's an oak tree, simple and crude. But as the generations pass, it changes. To save his crown, the king had to murder the innocent, and he had to make you thank him for it. The air in the chamber is thick with the smell of beeswax and secrets. You watch as the king, a man whose soul is a graveyard of desperate choices, stares into the fire. His 2 sins burn behind his eyes, a cure born of heresy, and an act of war he cannot admit to. Beside him, the bishop's shadow stretches like a stain across the stone floor. And Plagiothecium, a specific type of feather moss that grows only in the deepest, darkest, dampest parts of an old-growth forest. It's a moss that thrives in places where sunlight rarely touches the ground, places like the Blackwood. The same Blackwood the king declared haunted and forbade anyone from entering, just weeks before the Great Repentance burning. The pollen is the key. It connects the industrial fire at the royal granary to the forbidden forest. This is the pattern interrupt. This is the moment a crack appears in the beautiful, tragic lie you've been told your whole life. It's the visceral, gut-turning stench of marsh gas and a million years of decay. The ground doesn't hold you. It tries to swallow you. Every step is a wet, sucking sound as your fine leather boots sink into the primordial mud. He is waiting for you, exactly as the desperate rumor said he would be. He is just a man, his face a roadmap of wind and sun, his hands stained with lanolin and dirt. He owns nothing but a flock of nervous sheep and a forbidden secret. The church promised God's mercy, but in the damp cellars beneath the prayers, they were burying the cure. You can smell the lie. It's a mix of mold, rat droppings, and the holy, acrid smoke of burning knowledge. Your name is Brother Thomas, and your God-given task is to feed the flames. Upstairs, in the warmth of the scriptorium, Brother Michael is writing the official story for the king, a tale of righteous suffering, of a plague sent by God to test the faithful. His ink is made of oak galls and faith. Your fuel is made of heresy. But what they don't want you to know is that your mind, in this world, is sharper than any knight's sword. You know the secrets of the land in a way the nobility in their stone keeps never could. And that knowledge makes you dangerous. Official history tells the story of a divine miracle, of a king whose piety saved his kingdom from the whispering sickness, a plague that stole the mind before it took the body. But a terrified monk's hidden note, revealed only now by spectral imaging, tells a different story. The AI does not see a man's desperate hope to save his family. It sees only patterns. It cross-references the shepherd's symbols with a global database of botanical molecular structures. There is no scent of damp earth, no taste of bitter herbs, no memory of a fever breaking in the dead of night. There is only the cool, sterile hum of servers processing a dead man's soul. The ASMR sound isn't the scrape of a quill on vellum. It's the mere silent whir of a fan cooling the processor that is stealing a ghost's last secret. Then, a match. But this is a language for the oppressed, for those who know their story will be erased. This is a message from the shepherd. He couldn't write a book. It would have been found and burned with his body. So he encrypted his life, his discovery, his murder, into the most boring document imaginable. He weaponized tedium. You trace the first generation on the chart, Lord Oakhaven and his wife. Below them, a line of 7 children. The next generation has 4. The one after that, 12. The numbers feel random, but they're not. The whispering sickness is over, but the silence that follows is far more terrifying. It is the silence of a held breath, the silence of an enemy who is still out there, watching, waiting for you to falter. The kingdom was not saved. It is merely living on borrowed time, its lifeblood a secret, its future a prayer whispered in a cold, dark room. And you are the only one who knows the peace is a lie, a beautiful, fragile mask hiding the face of a war that has only just begun. But the atomic signature of a fire cannot be re-edited by a scribe or a priest. The earth doesn't lie. And then they find something else, something that makes the hair on your arms stand up. Inside the same soil layer, preserved for centuries, is the pollen record. You are expecting the pollen of local grasses, of wildflowers, maybe the wheat that was supposedly burned. Instead, the analysis shows a sudden, dramatic spike in 2 specific things. You, the ancient tree of the graveyard, its needles and berries a potent poison, its wood the source of the deadliest longbows. It is the admission that the crown on your head is just a circle of cold, useless metal. Which is why you are here now. The moon is gone, swallowed by a starless, ink-black sky. The fine-spun wool of your cloak is heavy with damp, smelling of horse sweat and wet earth. Only one guard is with you, a man whose silence you bought with a lifetime of loyalty. You have ridden beyond the castle walls, beyond the last sputtering torches of civilization, into the fens. The air itself is a physical assault. You watch as his hands, quick and deliberate, snap off only the blighted heads, the ones with the purple-black spurs, and slip them into a leather pouch at his belt. He moves with a purpose that is not born of ignorance. This is not an accident. This is agriculture. Someone isn't just watching the poison spread. Someone is farming it. A campaign designed to bury a terrifying secret that real power, the kind that could rewrite the world, was once held by the common man. The cold seeps through your thin wool tunic, a dampness that never leaves the bones. Smoke from the central fire stings your eyes, blurring the faces of the others huddled with you in this one-room hovel. Outside, a wet wind howls, and you hear the drip, drip, drip of rotting thatch. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. A recently digitized manuscript logged under the unassuming title, The Oakhaven Pedigree. He almost clicks past it. But something in the strange, coded marginalia, the drawings of leaves, roots, and moon cycles, hooks him. You are not in the medieval forest anymore. You are inside the machine. An AI-powered historical analysis program is unleashed upon the shepherd's life's work. The shepherd's hand, his careful, dirt-stained record of trial and error, is now just data. His knowledge of poultices, of seasons, of the subtle language of the forest, is flattened into algorithms. It is, by all accounts, the most uninteresting piece of vellum in the entire collection, a sprawling genealogical chart for a minor noble family that died out in the 14th century. Historians have glanced at it for centuries and dismissed it. They made a fatal mistake. They assumed they knew how to read. You lean closer, the silence of the room so heavy you can hear the faint, dry crackle of the ancient parchment beneath your gloved fingers. It smells of dust and time. 99% of people believe history is written in words. It's the same dark art practiced in the courts of the future, the official denial of a covert mission, the carefully crafted story of a lone wolf to hide the hand of the state. You need a third story, a lie to bury two truths, a narrative that can hold the realm together, even if that hold is a phantom's grip. You stare out into the darkness, but you are no longer looking at your kingdom. You are looking at a web of lies, with you, the king, a spider trapped at its center. The burn patterns locked in the soil are not the chaotic, uneven scorches of a public bonfire. They are too hot, too uniform. The silica in the soil has vitrified into glass, something that requires temperatures far exceeding a simple wood fire. This wasn't a ritual. It was an industrial-scale incineration. This was the methodical heat of a blast furnace, carefully managed, ruthlessly efficient. This is the physical evidence that what burned here wasn't a peasant's offering. It was a king's secret. 99% of historical facts are just the stories written by the victors. What they don't want you to know is that power is a performance, and when the stage lights fail, the actors are just men in costumes, stumbling in the dark. 99% of people believe history is shaped by edicts, battles, and coronations. They are wrong. True history happens in the desperate moments of silence, in the deals made when the official story has collapsed. It's the 3 a.m. phone call a president makes to a number that officially doesn't exist. It's the off-the-books meeting between a CEO and a regulator in a darkened parking garage. This is the poison that will drive it to madness. For weeks, you have watched, tallied, and mapped the spread in your mind. But today, you see something that makes the cold in your gut twist into ice. It's not a pattern of wind or rain. The blight is worst near the old miller's path. And then you see him. Not the old miller, but his boy, moving through the fields. He isn't harvesting the healthy grain. The greatest lie ever told isn't found in a holy book or a king's decree. It's a quiet lie, whispered for 1,000 years until it became the truth, that the people of the past, your ancestors, were simple, uneducated, powerless. It's a comforting lie because it makes you believe that power has always belonged in castles and cathedrals. But recently discovered evidence, hidden in the burnt margins of a forbidden text, reveals this for what it is: the most successful propaganda campaign in human history.